One of those gangsters killing people in the streets picked up a microphone too, and started rapping in the first person from the perspective of the actual killer.
Because at the same time, like, he spoke on open cases. You know what I'm saying? It's like.
But King Von actually went on to do one of the most psychopathic things I have ever seen.
4K Trey. This is really cool, gang. I'm thinking about getting down.
Slow down.
With more murders even taking place after he got rich and famous.
What Von done did, man. Let that man sleep. Why go throwing alarm clocks in graveyards? I hate that shit.
Which, in my opinion, takes him far beyond a street player who had to kill to survive in the mean streets of Chicago. Because if King Von's tweets are anything to go by, he simply loved killing people.
King Von was known to be a killer. A man who killed black people. A man who was accused of killing a black girl.
Trapl Ross, that's shame on you, bro. That's shame on you. You're a fucking culture vulture.
Real with you, nigga. Shame on you, nigga.
Shame on you, bitch ass nigga.
Because I'm gonna be real.
Fuck
you
that
might
nigga.
have, to be real, that was some hoe shit. Because if you really look at this
He's
shit,
a whore, nigga.
As you can tell from the title today, that we'll be talking about Trapl Ross.
Who?
And Trapl Ross, and culture vultures. Is he a culture vulture? Is he a snitch? What is a culture vulture? However, before we get into that, I'm going to need you to do me one small favor, and that's to like, comment, share, and subscribe. The next goal for this channel is 1,000 subscribers, so please help a brother out. All right, we're trying to grow the channel, make it better. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into this. Who is Trapl Ross?
I think that was Trapl
Yeah,
Ross.
the one with the
correct?
small head, the funny looking one, Harry Potter.
Yeah, Trapl Ross did that.
But not a huge fan of Trapl Ross. Just don't like it. Some of this
Nah, I
culture
fuck
vulture
with
shit irritates me.
Well, Trapl Ross is a content creator. He started his channel around 2015. However, he started uploading videos in 2019. He started with these like videos, kind of ranty, kind of comedy skits. Skits. But it evolved into this hybrid documentary video essay style where he comments on hip-hop culture and the gangster culture relating to hip-hop culture. Some of his more notable projects would be, the King Von documentary, the NBA Youngboy documentary. He's also covered the Moscow 17, Zone 2 beef. He's covered G Herbo. He's covered T Roy from, Chirac, King Von's best friend, which we'll touch upon here. He's covered loads of different aspects of hip-hop culture, loads of different aspects of hip-hop culture and the gangster culture that inspires some of these quote-unquote gangster rappers. His uncle was a alleged comedian, which I think helps with his delivery, helps with his sort of unusual comedic style at the same time as well. He has said that he loves hip-hop culture, he embraces hip-hop culture, so it kind of makes you question, how does he become a culture vulture? What is a culture vulture? Well, as you can tell from the definition on screen, a culture vulture is someone who's very interested in the music, arts, and other cultural pursuits. Defining it can be quite dicey, can be quite difficult. However, I believe the distinguishing factor, as articulated with what's on screen, is the genuine appreciation or appropriation. How do you define that? What is the key differences between appropriation and appreciation? How does one dice and maneuver around that dichotomy? I think a big aspect when you're talking about hip-hop culture specifically is
Tommy Hilfiger stood out, but FUBU never had been your collection.
FUBU, for us, by us. Hip-hop culture is built off the black.
I promise, like, and even it's been a witness.
Off the backs of black musicians, black artists. The house in which hip-hop culture was built on different black figures. But the problem is the gate in which people discuss needs gatekeeping was built by black people, but not owned by black people. So often, whether that be sports, whether that be hip hop culture, R&B music, the structures that fund into it and profit the most from it are not owned by black people. So when you see someone like Trapl Ross, who doesn't look like us, who doesn't resemble us, even in some sense, and I'm a bit hypocritical when it comes to this, from London, so it's not from that area, discuss it and profit off it, and sometimes seems to be more focused on the more salacious bits of the culture. It makes you a bit concerned about their intentions. Is it to take advantage? You can see this with people like Drake, who is hit the mainstream for his cultural appropriations. He's hit the mainstream, well, not the mainstream for his cultural appropriation, but he's a topic of discussion, whether he's a culture vulture, someone who still jumps on trends to keep himself more popular. Is that a smart marketing ploy? Is it genuine cultural appropriation? How do you identify this? How? And I think the problem is so often is when we're talking about these, who owns hip hop culture, who profits off it, it's not just that they are white, it's how they discuss the artists, the messages they put forward.
I don't know what's this opioid thing, man.
Well, being a crackhead wasn't cool back then. Being a crackhead wasn't cool. Now they seem like they're making it cool to be drinking lean and syrup, and
it's the most dangerous. It's the most dangerous thing that's facing our society.
So why sign an artist that would promote that?
Because I already answered that question. You weren't paying attention. She asked me talent or issues, and I said talent. But I have to. I can't give up on people.
But I'm saying that's hypocritical, though. You're saying
it's opportunistic.
Yeah.
I got people to feed. I got a business to run.
You're gonna make Dame Dash take this clip and call you a culture vulture.
Who's Dame Dash? You brought him up. I don't even know him. So you bring his name up. I don't even know him. So
y'all made a lot of money together.
Made a lot of
money.
Come
on, Leo. Don't do that to him.
I don't know him.
You see that clip there from Leo Cohen, to me demonstrates, and Leo Cohen, just for context, is he's a music executive now of YouTube Music. He is someone that helped run Def Jam when Russell Simmons was in charge. He helped usher in Rockefeller, the music label that once was owned by Dame Dash and Jay-Z. And you can hear from his voice when he's discussing that crack epidemic, the drug epidemic that is happening in music today, in the US today, and it's been promoted in some way through the music, that he seems to have very little care. He seems to be more focused on the profit. And that's the problem with hip hop culture and its commodifiedness by the mainstream, is that it spends a lot of time being used by people and it's not protected, it's not looked after. It's a very capitalist thing. It's a very capitalist agenda, this cultural vulturism, because it uses you and disposes of you the second you're not at its peak profitability, and you distrust anything that comes from anyone that looks like that.
The devil's money, you know what I mean? And that's what I didn't use. I never used to use the devil's money, and I still won't.
Who's the devil's money?
Whoever's not creative that's exploiting an artist.
Like a Leo Cohen type of guy?
Definitely Leo Cohen. He's a culture vulture. I made the term up just for him. You know what I mean?
Did you hear what he said about you on Charlemagne?
Years ago? Yeah, I've been punishing him for that. So usually what happens, algorithmically, another culture always tries to erase another culture that they're trying to empower's history, so that all their leaders they make don't exist. So that's exactly what they do. They try to erase our history. But the thing where he had the gall was that he did it on one of what's supposedly our platform in front of our people, and he did it so recklessly that he was unconscious that we were all watching. So to sit there and say, Damon, I don't know him, what are you saying when he's not around? You're trying to act like he doesn't exist because you want to take credit for everything that he did. And that's what Steve Stout did, and that's what Lior does.
You see, what Dame Dash articulates to me is the fears people have when you look at a Leo Cohen, when you look at a DJ Vlad, Adam 22, is that these people focus on the more salacious bits for profit and don't care about the long-term sustainability of not only the artist, but the messaging that gets put out. In what way does this relate to Trapl Ross? And it reminded me of this Complex magazine quote. And that is that the issues that are in hip hop culture are longer than hip hop culture itself. It is genuinely the commodification and the general exploitation of black music and blackness. And when you look at Trapl Ross and his discussions about hip hop culture, gangster music, gangster rappers, and their quote unquote gangster past, you wonder, is he exploiting it for profit? I would say that's tough. I would say no. As you can see, he's someone that loves the music. He says he embraces and listens to it all. And in order to do these documentaries for 3, 4, 5 hours long, you need to have a love of the music. You need to have a love of the culture.
I'm a super fan. Like, I'm one of the biggest fans of Von that you will find, bro. Like, I see people in the comments that are like, oh, I bet you don't even listen to Von like that. Bro, all day long, I'm listening to Von, Youngboy, Dirk. Like, I am the super fan. And the only reason that I'm able to do it at this level is because I'm such a fan. Like, it's hard to find someone that's a bigger fan of this shit than me. So I feel like
my problem sometimes with Trapl Ross is especially when you take the King Von documentary.
With more murders even taking place after he got rich and famous, with it being rumored that Von used his money and influence from the rap game to have old enemies in Chicago killed. And going on a journey which, in my opinion, takes him far beyond a street player who had to kill to survive in the mean streets of Chicago, because if King Von's tweets are anything to go by, he simply loved killing people. And the sheer amount of people that King Von allegedly played a role in killing has led to intense speculation as to whether he was a full-blown serial killer. A title which King Von's enemies even said that him and his friends took personal pride in. Now, the FBI defines a serial killer as a person who kills over 3 people with time spans in between them of more than a month. Furthermore, serial killers tend to have an element of psychological gratification which plays a role in the motive for their murders. The FBI also state that a serial killer might seek various kinds of gratification through their killings, such as anger, thrill-seeking, financial gain, or simply for attention. I personally believe that over the course of his career, King Von demonstrated all of these characteristics and can indeed be classified as a serial killer.
It's calling him a serial killer. Sometimes he looks at these lives and it becomes painted in caricature, it becomes painted in subrealism when he discusses it. However, and you also have to look at it from this point when he just uses the tweets, he uses the lyrics that these rappers use, and why I say you have a question about his full understanding of the culture is that he doesn't realize there's a lot of cap in people's rap. He doesn't realize there's a lot of, you could be, like Sharp said, someone could be talking about another person's killing. You could be talking about a group of people's killing. You could be a lot of time what happens with tweets. And I don't agree with the tweeting out about what just happened. However, you could be using that as a way just to score points on the ops. You can be using that as a way to just brag and mock your opponents, as opposed to just completely dry snitching. In some shape or form, it is dry snitching. I'm not trying to remove from that, but the way Trapl discusses it is he takes it so literal without even sometimes factoring in that this could be all bullshit. He could just be scoring points. He could just be trying to mock his ops.
That 95% of rappers aren't doing anything of the things they say they do in their rap.
There's a lot of cap in people's rap. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people might say certain things. Hey, he caught 7 bodies, never caught a body in their life. He might even be telling, let me speak.
Of course, yeah,
he might be telling a story. You know how many niggas will pick up the next nigga's story and tell it like they own? You ever had somebody do that to you?
And shit,
and you find the fuck out that this
every
wasn't
day.
even you. You're really talking about your homeboy the whole time. You know what I'm saying?
And I think some of the criticism that is levied against him can be a bit unfair, but like Sharp said, you do wonder, like, it goes into borderline bashing and calling him a serial killer, calling him a murderer.
And to me, this is where we see King Von really beginning to take pleasure in killing. For years to come, he would tweet mocking Modell, saying it's messed up what happened to him and that he's a straight sucker. It's this sort of behaviour where I believe that Von crosses the line from a normal gangbanger killing to survive to a full-blown serial killer who is taking the lives of others systemically for his own personal gratification. At this point, Von has already satisfied the conditions of being a serial killer, having allegedly killed more than 3 people in different locations with large periods of time in between the killings. And his tweets express a clear tendency to take pleasure in killing and a desire to show the world what he's doing.
There seems to be a lack of understanding of the true reality of street life, street culture, road life. The Kai and King Von aspect of his life and of their relationship, I seem to think he misunderstood that.
And the guy, Ross, is like, these people didn't even know.
Nah, but it's mad stories about them too. Like, there's a story that they fell in love. There's a story that she was trying to kill. Like, there's a lot of...
They were trying to kill each other for a while.
And that's how they found love. That's the story.
That's how they fell in love.
And the FBI put out something, this was maybe a year after Von passed, that they named him as her killer.
Why did I say he misunderstood that? For a number of reasons. He can at times take it very literal, and it's funny that the Kai segment was the only time he didn't read the tweets as literal, was the only time he didn't understand that those tweets could be innuendos to things. Also, for them to have a relationship where they had each other's numbers, they were DMing each other. This is why I say he may have never really lived this life. No one DMs their ops unless it's, where are you? Send your location.
17-year-old gangster disciple Jakira Barnes, aka K.I., was a legendary figure in Chicago gang history, with the Chicago Sun-Times describing her in a prominent feature as a prolific female assassin in the Chicago gang war. K.I. has been described as the real-life Snoop from The Wire, a reference to the masculine female killer from HBO's crime drama. K.I. herself had been close with Tuka growing up, and her rumoured involvement in the killing of O.D. Perry in retaliation would make her feud with O-Block deeply personal. No doubt King Von was obsessed with K.I. Von and K.I. would have extensive back and forths on Twitter, with it being unclear whether he was trying to date her or kill her. That same day, K.I. would tell her followers to retweet if they think she looks good. King Von retweeted it. K.I. would tweet saying that she'd beaten up someone from O-Block and that they should go and tell Von that she is tough. This would prompt a reply from Von, where he would say he can tell that she's tough, and jokingly asking her if she's looking for a boyfriend, as well as expressing doubt that she had even beat up his friend, with her replying saying she'd caught an O-Block member on the train who had denied being from there when beaten up, with King Von's sister chiming in claiming to have been there too, and K.I. saying that her victim didn't even punch her back. All this provoked a sarcastic reply from Von, where he said that he thinks he was falling in love with this fighting female. Many years later, somebody on 4chan would claim to have hacked K.I.'s private DMs on Twitter, and revealing that around this time, Von had DM'd K.I. asking her if she wanted to hook up, or more specifically saying he wants to nail her. She would reply saying she's not interested, to which Von replies, when all of this is over, he will have her. More alleged tweets would see K.I. asking Von straight up if O-Block are plotting to kill her, to which Von replies, he's not gonna lie, there are people looking to kill her. But Von would say he doesn't think he can kill her because he thinks she seems cool as hell. Even after Von went to jail in 2013, Von's sister would tweet at K.I. saying that Von had asked her to go and visit him in jail, with Von's sister later suggesting that she had even had a fistfight with K.I. and saying that she will see her on 63rd, perhaps for another fight. When Von was released from jail in 2014, he would tweet at K.I. and ask if she missed him, with her replying, asking when they're meeting up, and adding 4 gun emojis, with Von expressing disappointment that K.I. didn't come and see him in jail like he'd asked. Now, bear in mind, tweeting at K.I. was one of the first things that Von did upon getting out of jail. He tweeted her twice before he had tweeted at Chief Keef or any of his actual friends from O-Block.
That's what I'm saying. He may not fully understand, and the people that are taking in this information to the masses, I should say, they may not fully understand what the life is. You don't DM your ops. Your ops give you PTSD. Your ops give you anxiety. It's not something that you would regularly do. So that's why when Joe Biden said that they could be in love, I think Trapl Ross, and this is just a little criticism because generally I think his work's amazing and everyone should go check it out. He kind of may not have understood that aspect of the anxiety, the fear that comes from even cooperating with people that you're supposed to have beef with. He doesn't understand that he misses that bit out. And for him not to understand that there clearly was some sort of interest there, some sort of friendship here, for you two to be going back and forth in DMs, direct messages, was a little bit worrying that he missed that out. And also, I think another part that he may not have understood is when he brought in the King Von being in the documentary for Kai when she died.
Later that afternoon, K.I. would be standing on a nearby porch in the 6400 block of South Eberhart Avenue, only a 3-minute walk towards O-Block from the location that she had tweeted she was at earlier that day. And that was the day that King Von would allegedly find that woman that he had been looking for all this time, as K.I. would indeed be gunned down on April the 11th, 2014. The murder report on K.I.'s death would feature a witness describing the shooter who hopped out of a car, catching KI and another man who were about to shoot dice. They would run into a gangway, but the shooter kept firing, apparently even shouting, "Yeah, bitch ass N-words," as he fired the handgun at KI multiple times. O-Block veteran Jay Hood would reveal in a Cam Capone interview many years later that Von came back to O-Block and told him what he'd done immediately after the murder.
But he literally say just like this, I'm looking straight, he meant why I just run up on KI and why I just ran up on them and caught KI. She was the last one running out of the gate. I was like, no way.
But King Von actually went on to do one of the most psychopathic things I have ever seen. Because on May the 23rd, 2019, a documentary about KI would air on A&E titled Secret Life of a Gang Girl. This piece goes in depth into the life of KI, exploring her motivations to become a gang member despite being a petite young woman, as well as interviewing some of the people that knew her during this time. And that documentary about KI would interview none other than King Von, who was featured prominently in the documentary, and if you ask me, he was just straight up trolling the TV crew, who clearly hadn't done their homework. Von would appear in the show, portraying himself as having been an infatuated admirer pursuing KI for nothing but romantic reasons. And the fact that the film crew didn't even have an inkling that Von was responsible is just crazy to me. And it's not like the info that he killed KI wasn't already circulating out there at this point. Because while Von is in jail for his next murder in 2016, word of his story as a shooter in the Chicago gang war would spread on the edgy message board 4chan, where a gang-obsessed 4chan member would claim to have accessed KI's private DMs, exposing those private messages which we already saw between King Von and KI all the way back in 2012. With this deranged 4chan user even replying to friends of KI from her account who had continued to DM her after her death looking for closure, with that 4chan hacker writing a lengthy post claiming to have been told by a friend of KI's in the DMs that they believed King Von was her killer.
It's a risk for him to be there. People could have come there and tried to score points on him, tried to jump him there. I think that aspect was missed out, and I would have liked him to explore that as more of a kind of twisted romance between two rival beefing clans and this kind of twisted hip-hop Romeo and Juliet kind of shit. Because I got more of that vibe. If I'm being quite honest. And I do think that is sometimes that comes down to him not understanding street life and the culture around it and the palpable fear and anxiety that comes from dealing with people that you have beef with, people that have hurt you, people who have killed your friends. I think he can understand sometimes the humanity, but he misses that bit out. I do think that far too often rappers, other hip-hop music figures, and just people in that life tweeting, rapping, putting on Reddit things that have happened to people that you're allegedly having beef with. It's dry snitch, and it does lead to a culture where documentaries are made about you and your life, whether they are fair, unfair, or misguided in their assessments. It can lead to a lot of misunderstanding, miscommunication, and penal sentences.
I know Bobby Shmurda. Good kid, man.
Yeah.
Good kid. I mean, it's crazy to me because his life really went from 0 to 100 back to 0 that quick.
Well, back to negative 100.
It was just this summer.
It was 0 to 100 to negative 100.
Yeah, the Smoney Dance came out this summer.
Yeah.
I mean, last summer.
When you're in jail, you're not at 0. You're at
negative. Yeah,
you're at negative. I mean, here's the one thing that kind of stood out to me in this whole situation. You know, the standout line in that song was, Mitch caught a body about a week ago.
And he really had a homeboy named Mitch.
And in the list of people being indicted,
there
was something, aka Mitch. And I think it was up for a murder. I'm not sure about the details about Mitch, but the fact that Mitch is being indicted and you're talking about him catching a body in the song is like...
You see how the fans take it. Someone like Adam22, and I know if you've watched other stuff of mine, you know how I feel about Adam. Fuck Adam. However, how Adam discusses and analyzes the NBA Youngboy documentary, to me was disturbing. To me was the most worrying.
Over the last 5 years, there's been few rappers that have generated as much excitement and controversy as Youngboy. His music is personal, thought-provoking, and violent in equal measure. He's one of the few artists who can top the Billboard charts with music all about killing, death, and destruction. But his ability to communicate the stark realities of life growing up in the dangerous slums of Baton Rouge have inspired people all over America and the world at large.
exhausted. This NBA Youngboy 6-hour documentary is really taking its toll on my mental health. I feel like I might be actually ready to join
6-hour documentary.
4K Trey. This is really cool, gang. I'm thinking about getting down.
Slow down.
Okay.
What is that?
As far as I understand, NBA Youngboy started his own blood set out of Baton Rouge called 4K Trey. Now, we don't exactly know what that stands for. They're saying it might be for Cantrell, which is his name, or something along those lines. But either way, they wear green bandanas.
Well, who told you this?
You see, this is where hip-hop culture becomes commodified, used, and looked at for its most salacious aspects of the culture and the information and imagery and artistry that they're trying to put out. You see, NBA Youngboy's documentary, I think, has actually been misconstrued by Adam 22. The fact that he watched 5 hours of a documentary and all he took from it was a potential off-gang for Cantrell clique that he wanted to be a part of.
I mean, just take a second to think about the situation that Youngboy was dealing with here as a child. His father is serving 55 years for robbery, with one uncle who snitched on him, and his other uncle was also a prolific robber who got shot in the head and killed during a robbery. All this would leave him as a lost child with no father figure, who even saw robbery as part of his DNA. That's a heavy situation for an 8-year-old kid to be dealing with. And with no father figure in his life, Youngboy would have to rely on the females in his family to look after him and make him a man. Despite his mother Sharonda Golden being alive, she apparently wasn't there for Youngboy as a child at all times. So, he would initially be raised by his loving grandmother Alice Golden, but unfortunately, Youngboy's grandmother would pass away too, leaving him devastated for years to come. Youngboy would open up about the loss of his grandmother in a Billboard interview in 2023, calling her his protector. After losing his grandmother, with his father in jail and his mother out of the picture, Youngboy wound up in a group home, and it would be here that he would be subject to physical abuse and bullying. He would later explain in a Billboard interview that it was this experience of being targeted in the group home that led him to cultivate his own dark and violent side for protection. Clearly, Youngboy had to fight for survival as a child. In fact, he actually broke his neck whilst he was wrestling as a toddler. This was a serious injury which required him to wear a full neck and head brace whilst his spine healed. This was a corrective procedure which left him with the 3 iconic head scars that he has on his head to this day, an everyday reminder on his face of just one painful incident that he endured as a child, and something his enemies are still quick to use against him, with the hurtful moniker Denthead often being levied against him. Youngboy had gone through so many traumatic experiences as a child, it's unsurprising that he would grow up dealing with a lot of pain.
How much that's taken and robbed from the humanity and soul and comfort from NBA Youngboy. And after 5 hours, all Adam could talk about was that aspect of it, the potential gang that he was a part of. Makes me worried for hip-hop culture and how it's genuinely being consumed. Because for so long, what Trapl Ross was discussing was the life and the pain that led NBA Youngboy to this. I mean, he did a whole background on the history of Louisiana and how a rapper from Louisiana, NBA Youngboy, got into the position that he did.
After the Civil War, as time would go on, Louisiana creatives would continue to experiment with music. Blues music is believed to have originated in the Deep South in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The African American communities in New Orleans are credited with pioneering jazz music in the early 1910s. And in the 1950s, more new musical genres emerged, like swamp pop, where young Cajuns and Creoles would combine traditional French Louisiana music with New Orleans-style rhythm and blues and country and western music, as well as the more low-tempo swamp blues originating in the black communities of southwest Louisiana. Into the 50s and 60s, the civil rights movement would further impact Louisiana's music scene, as African American musicians leveraged their talents to amplify the call for racial equality, often using their platforms to shed light on the struggles that they had faced. R&B and soul music, with their origins in gospel and blues, would become vehicles for expressing the aspirations of the African American community. And then, of course, as hip-hop emerged in the 80s and boomed through the 90s, a whole wave of aspirational southern rappers would emerge from Louisiana's biggest cities. In New Orleans, modern rap was pioneered by Master P and his No Limit clique, later being taken to brave new heights in hip-hop's bling era by the likes of Cash Money Records, headed by Birdman and his prodigy Lil Wayne. While the flashy antics of bling rappers might come across to some as tasteless, others would be inspired by these emerging black role models who were showing the world through artistry that a persecuted black man in the Deep South could become a multi-millionaire and build generational wealth off the back of sharing their lived experience through music. Now, things still aren't perfect, but the success of rap music in the Deep South represents a triumph over repression to me. And I'm telling you all of this because all of this history is very important context. Because the social circumstances that persisted in Louisiana over hundreds of years all led up to a single moment in time, where the perfect circumstances existed to create one of the modern day's most exciting and controversial music artists.
And something that is even more disturbing for me was how NBA Youngboy makes music every day, and Adam 22 says he listens to his music and he loves his music, but he makes music regularly every day. It's a form of creation, it's a form of expression. The pain in NBA Youngboy's music is completely forgotten, and this is something that I read Raymond Somerville discuss, and that is the fetishization of gangster culture and how gangster culture has become fetishized. It's become embedded into the African American folklore. The article demonstrates how film, music have played all a part in the gangster culture, how it's been fetishized, and it's removed so much of the humanity of these artists, different things that they speak about, and how far too often that the gangster culture, the gun culture around these artists typically just benefits the weapons manufacturers and the military industrial complex, because a lot of those military contracts also are companies that make firearms. So when you connect it to that, it's as if it's just benefiting one person, one group of people. And it's worrying to me, and it's scary to me that that doesn't get discussed enough. Like, why are so many guns sold in Chicago? How come there's so much beef that's going on in Chicago that it's close to a civil war? These kids are tweeting about it, and the police are doing nothing about it. There's so many unsolved murders. Chicago has a death toll that rivals what happened in Iraq in a war, and it's looked at as just beef. That's a civil war, and that's clearly when there's so many unsolved murder at this point. Clearly it must be a little bit intentional. Is it just negligence? Is the law enforcement that negligent? Or has there been some sort of quiet, unconscious or conscious effort to ignore the killing there? Let them kill themselves, they're animals anyway.
My city, we would keep the traffic in the dark, people to call it. They're animals anyway, so let them lose their souls.
Trapl does allude to it in the King Von documentary. He does allude to it. And in the NBA Youngboy documentary, he makes a conceited effort to discuss the background. But the problem is the Adam 22s, the fans, how they take it. Focusing on the most salacious part. You see another article from Matthew Aware where he discusses the pain, the sensitivity from some of these rappers, which is lost in this hyper masculinized figure of what hip hop music is and gangster music is. You can see this in King Von's music. You can see this when he discusses and raps about his friends, that have passed away and how he wants to take revenge for it. You can see this in NBA Youngboy's music, where there's a lot of pain and sorrow in the music that he discusses. However, when we put out certain imagery, whether that's guns, violence, groups of people which look like gangs and resembles gangs, the actual artistry and whether conscious or subconscious message that they're trying to put out these different rappers gets forgotten about, because gangster culture has been fetishized. And in some shape or form, Trapl Ross himself doing these documentaries sadly is a part of that fetishization, often not intentional, if I'm being quite frank with you. But the fans internalize it because the imagery of guns and violence is more poignant than the hearty message of overcoming obstacles, defending your friends, trying to make ends meet in a world in which you feel like you couldn't. You see, gangster culture originated in hip hop music, especially from the NWA days, Ice Cube, which was a lot of it to do with police brutality, fighting against police brutality, working against police brutality. When you fast forward a little bit to Tupac, for example, and you see the things that he talks about, yes, a lot of it is a little bit along the gangster side. However, there's a big message from not just his music, but his interviews against his pushback against police brutality, the policing of black people, the policing of black children.
Be logical. You know, if I know that in this hotel room they have food every day, and I'm knocking on the door every day to eat, and they open the door, let me see the party, let me see like them throwing salami all over I mean, just like throwing food around, but they're telling me there's no food in here. You know what I'm saying? Every day, I'm standing outside trying to sing my way in. You know what I'm saying? We are hungry, please let us in. We are hungry, please let us in. After about a week, that song is going to change to, we hungry, we need some food. After 2-3 weeks, it's like, you know, give me all the food, breaking out the door. And after a year, you just like, you know what I'm saying? I'm picking the lock, coming through the door, blasting, you know what I'm saying? It's like you hungry, you reached your level, you don't want any more. We asked 10 years ago. We was asking with the Panthers. We was asking with them, you know, with civil rights movement. We was asking, you know, now those people that were asking, they're all dead and in jail. So now what do you think we're gonna do? Ask?
And far too often when people discuss hip hop music, is that bit is removed from the conversation. And what is really focused in the conversation is more the salacious bit, the gangsters, the guns, the music, the women, the violence is what's discussed, and not where that violence stemmed from, that inner frustration, that inner pain of feeling powerless. Tupac said it best. After a while, you get tired of knocking on the door and you want to take it by force. And that lawlessness, that gangster culture is sort of a rebellion against an enslaved people. That's what led to the hyper-masculinization of blackness. So often emasculated by not just white supremacy, but the white structures that led to the Tupacs, that led to the NWAs, the Ice Cube. But what's happened now is that the imagery is so powerful, so poignant, that it's been spread into these different aspects of where people are tweeting their ops, tweeting at their ops, saying we just took down one of our other ops. NBA Youngboy going on rants on IG Live and Snapchat.
I ain't telling academics to post shit about me. Niggas hoes. I ain't never paid attention to a nigga, especially from no motherfucking cell, nigga. The fucking nigga watching me fuck. Then what a nigga say? A nigga say I cooperated. About what, you stupid bitch?
And that messaging and that essence of what gangster culture originally was, in some sense, that though it was lawless and it was causing a nuisance, was the rebellion against white supremacy, white control. Even the illicit markets were a form of creation and curation for black people to provide for their families. Hence why a lot of males, I should say, in that communities, white or black, who could understand and relate to those emotions, would go into illicit markets as a way to provide, a way to gain masculinity and that protectorship in a society, in a community that didn't give them avenues to financially provide for their families at a good enough level. Although, you know, we all know trapping really doesn't make a lot of money deep down. It gets removed and it gets commodified, and you have Adam 22 saying the shit that he says. And I don't want to rant for too long, because I want to make it very clear that what I think of Trapl Ross is I don't see him as a culture vulture. Simple as that. I think he can be a bit misguided. I think at times he can take those tweets and those lyrics far too seriously. I think he can take those tweets far too literal, and sometimes doesn't understand the context, doesn't understand that people do cap in their raps. They do lie on the internet just to score points, just to get this ego boost over people that have harmed them. Like I said, it's akin to a war. You've got to look at these children in this beef, where there's shooting, where there's continuous fighting, as more as PTSD victims of war, suffering PTSD and finding ways to cope with it. He said himself that King Von was struggling with sleep. I mean, it's something NBA Youngboy has discussed throughout his music. Many of these quote-unquote gangster rappers have discussed it, and I think sometimes labeling him a serial killer, labeling him a murderer, can remove the humanity of him, and far often his humanity was shone through, even in the documentary, but you would miss it because the narrative that Trapl was trying to speak on, and I know his heart is in the right place. I know he wants to do better for the community, but I think sometimes when he discusses them and labels them certain things, he can do more damage, especially the position and the race he's from. He can be looked at as an aficionado on the situation, and when he highlights him as a murderer, as a serial killer, because he is a murderer, allegedly, but when you highlight him as a serial killer, you're saying that he has psychopathy. You're saying he's a sociopath. And that's 1%. That means he has no humanity. And he did seem to have humanity. Is he wrong? Is he misguided? Is he someone that deserves lamentment? Yes. But serial killer, it does link to what Sharp said.
I don't feel like it be journalism. I think sometimes y'all go like borderline bashing. Like, you know what I'm saying, bro? Like you bash that person, like legend bash. Like, you know what I'm saying, you're bashing their legacy. You know what I'm saying, in a sense. Because like,
it is bashing, it is tearing down his character. And the man has died. So I think Trapl does need to be a little bit more careful sometimes with his overall assessments. Because to say serial killer, beefing people, he's just killing people that killed his people and trying to protect himself misguidedly. And also, on top of that, he seemed to me a child who didn't fully understand the regard for human life. But he never seemed like someone who was devoid of emotions. And I think that was a bit unfair. I think NBA Youngboy, he did a fantastic job. However, sometimes I wish he would just highlight the point more, that these are human beings behind these caricatures that they're creating. And what's ended up happening is that people, in order to make money, have further played into these caricatures, further played into these gangster images, whether they are lying, embellishing, or talking about other people's stories to find a way out of their helpful situations. It's commodified, it's fetishized. We have to play that part into it. And I think sometimes Trapl Ross can kind of play into that fetishization of it. But what he's done with his YouTube series, his documentary series, is created this amazing, and I think actually elevated the standard of YouTube content creation by his work. I just wish he could be a little bit more careful, because his fans and sometimes his narratives can play into the worst kinds of stereotypes of some of these gangster rappers and black people in general. Is he snitching? Yeah, he is. But the rappers have to hold a lot of accountability too. A lot. Going out here, whether you're capping or talking about a next man's killing on the internet, putting in your lyrics at such graphic details, there's no wonder why the essence of what your music was trying to be and is trying to be is forgotten. There's a reason why gangster music and gangster rap has connected so widespread. It's not just the illicit images. It's those feelings of fight back. It's those feelings of protecting your family, those protocols, those principles, those understandings have been lost because far too often what they push so much forward is the salacious bits. And no wonder there's more exploitation. No wonder. I'll close with this. Trapl Ross is more of a force for good. He wants to help the community. He does try to highlight the victims in this too. I do think sometimes he forgets, sometimes the perpetrator was also a victim. And sometimes the content himself can become the enabler. That full circle. The content kind of promotes this lifestyle and pushes this lifestyle accidentally. And the victims have also been the perpetrators, and the perpetrators have also been the victims. It can be very much forgotten how much this can play a part. And sometimes when you look at gangster culture, this hip hop culture, this gang culture that's happened, people forget it. The amount of negligent policing that goes on, that feels intentional when you look at the firearms industry and how much money is pumped in by America and that these are being used. Does America really care because it bursts them a profit? Is this some sort of new age mandingo fighting? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But it leaves me with more worrying questions. Trapl Ross is more of a force for good. Also, he does try to help. But we do need to be more careful in the imageries that we put out, because the home that we built, sadly, is still not owned by us. And we have to be a little bit more diligent in how we protect and gatekeep it. And that might just start with internal work and being more mindful of what we put out there. We're hypersexualized, hyper-aggressified, that's a word now. We have to be a bit more careful. Guys, I like that episode. I enjoyed that episode. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. If you thought I was waffling, if you thought I was chatting shit, hey, put it into the comments. If you didn't like it, put a thumbs down. If you did like it, put a thumbs up. I can't wait to hear from you guys again. See you next week. Peace.
Because at the same time, like, he spoke on open cases. You know what I'm saying? It's like, bro, this shit, like this, like, it's this thing called a RICO. You know what I'm saying? That, like, I don't even know what to say about that, bro. I don't like.
So you never gave him authorization or permission to tell your story on YouTube?